Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candace Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this evening. Happy Friday. We are here live on November 29th, 2024. Last Friday of the month, we're going to be doing live astrology readings. I'm going to be hanging out with you guys this evening. We're going to be looking at charts live and I'll be answering your questions. So if you want to get a reading and get some insight with what's going on with this up and coming new moon in Sagittarius, let's do it. Please do me a favor if you can see me. Give me a thumbs up, like the video, and consider clicking the bell button below. Subscribe to the channel. This will let you know when I have new videos coming out. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, trying to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. How was your guys' Thanksgiving? How was your turkey day? I just got back into town. I was actually gone for a couple of days, so kind of getting back into the swing of things. But if you guys are watching this, we are actually live on Friday the 29th. So if you're seeing this on Saturday morning, Sunday, we're no longer live. Please don't send any donations for readings. But if you guys are wanting to get a reading and this is your first time, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to scan the QR code right here. This is going to take you to my PayPal account. You can make a donation of $55 US. Please, in the memo box, it's very important that you put your information. So I need to know the exact time, date, and location of where and when you were born. Please put the, spell out the month, put the AM or the PM. We need the exact time and the city, state, and country in which you were born. That allows me to cast your chart and answer your questions. And in the memo box, please be specific and ask one question. Generalized readings, guys, are not easy to do. If you're saying, tell me about love, relationships, work, money, health, pick one thing and let me know if you have a specific question and I'm happy to answer your question. Equally, on the channel, we have memberships. So I create long form educational content, really talking about what's going on collectively with the energies astrologically. And I create a lot of content for the channel. And if you guys want to support me as a full-time content creator, I've got a few different levels that you guys can get in on, especially level 3. That's going to get a reading with me once a month. I'm generally here most every Friday around 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. on the Pacific Coast, and 7 p.m. on the Eastern Coast. So we're always here hanging out on Fridays. Consider joining my memberships if you want to get a reading. And just really quick, it is Friday, so since Thanksgiving and kind of between Thanksgiving and also Cyber Monday and all the other holidays that are kind of going on, there's a bunch of stuff on sale at my website. So if you guys want to get a discount on a 2025 calendar, if you want a personalized digital calendar, if you want to take one of my courses and pick them up, they're all on sale. We also have lots of new products. We've got zodiac mugs and we've got tarot bags and lunar calendars and all kinds of cool stuff. So if you guys are wanting to check that out, check out my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. You guys can especially check out my courses. This is like the heaviest discount that we do all year long. And we've got beginners tarot and astrology, as well as intermediate astrology, where you learn all about transits and predictive methods. So that can all be found at beyondtheveiltarot.com. All right, thank you for letting me do my shameless plug. Obviously, if you're new here, basically we're gonna take the level 3 people first. So if there's any level 3 people here that have not already gotten a reading in the month of November, give me a shout out. I know that we have Shannon here. If there's any other level 3 people, let me know. So I'll definitely take, Sharon. Sharon is here. Sharon, not Shannon. What's up, Sharon? Melissa's here. Dorothy, what's up, Dorothy? How are you guys doing? Melissa, did you want a relationship reading? Because it looks like you chose synastry. So do you want me to look at that in another person? Or do you have a specific question other than wanting information about relationship stuff? And I see that you didn't put the exact time. So it's a little tricky to give you exact answers without the time. So even if it's morning, generally what I can do is like a 6 a.m. chart. But obviously we don't know if that's accurate. We want to get the closest time as possible. Or we can base it off of your sun sign. So you can let me know which one you would prefer. I can cast it with just your sun sign on the ascendant and just go off of that. But generally the most accurate, the better. So we can do 6 a.m., but I can't guarantee that that's going to be accurate. hydrating and preparing for the retrogrades. Yeah, no, tell me about it. It's so funny. It's funny, but it's not funny, but I'll share it with you guys because you guys are astrologically inclined. But the Mercury retrograde it's already happening. It's in Sagittarius right now, and the retrograde is in my 3rd house, so it's about traveling. And the Mercury retrograde started and I was out of town, and I had a dog sitter that was watching my French bulldog. And he has really bad anxiety. Like, he hyperventilates when he gets in the car when we take him to like the place that he's watched. So we sent him to the the location where he was going to be kind of babysat for a couple of days while I was gone for the holiday. And he went with a bag of CBD chews for anxiety. Anyway, not funny, but the dog sitter left them on the counter, and she was watching like 7 dogs, and like two golden doodles like jumped up and scaled on the counter, and they got the bag of CBD dog treats. They ate the entire bag. And I was like sitting there looking at the transits, like I didn't know if I wanted to laugh or I wanted to cry when she called me, because she called me and she's like, yeah, I need to talk to you. And I thought something was wrong with my dog. Anyway, so it was like the epitome of like Mercury retrograde in my 3rd house, get an unexpected phone call, square Saturn in my 6th house. That is literally about somebody who's watching my animals, and then square Neptune, which is about like drugs or something that could have been like, like scary or kind of like toxic. So it's not funny. The dogs are fine. I think they just got like super kind of stony baloney for the night. Went to go and pick up the dog, and it was just like, yeah, anyway, completely dead on with the astrology with the Mercury square Neptune. So I'm wondering if anybody else is having any of that stuff too. Anyways, so she said it's not funny. We want the babies to be okay. It's not funny, but they were totally fine. Thank God it was CBD, so it wasn't the good stuff, So if we're having any issues with the feed, just let me know, guys. It might be going in or out, so I'll give it a second before we get started. Red Druidess says, I've been drinking more water lately. Yeah, definitely with the squares to Neptune. That's important. All right, so on with the show. So we are going to be taking the level 3 people. So is there anybody else here other than Sharon? And anybody else who wants to get in, you can get in. And what I'll do is I'll call a couple names in advance. You guys will hear me say everybody who's already in the queue for the readings. And then after that, as we kind of go through the evening tonight, you'll hear me call the names, and that's like me letting you know, like, hey, you're on deck, your reading's kind of coming up. How is the audio and video for you guys? Is it okay? All right, let me know. All right, so this is who I've got. I have got, obviously, we're going to take our level 3 people first. So we're going to take Sharon. I've also got Miranda, Claire, Melissa. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. What's up, Rochelle? Self-Made is here. Hello. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Sometimes it's a little funny. We never know, especially with the retrograde. Mercury likes to do that too. It's like you'll talk shit about the retrograde, and then all of a sudden it's like, there goes your feed. And let's see, that's pretty much everybody so far. So if you guys want to get in the queue, scan the QR code. We'll let you know when we're going to shut it down. I never know, like after holidays. Sometimes like the day after a holiday, there's a ton of people. Sometimes there isn't, so we'll see. All right, so we're going to start first with Sharon. What's up, Sharon? Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being a level 3 subscriber member. I appreciate it. She says, I want to use my reading 10/28/97, 6 p.m. in South Africa. Would like anything of interest that's showing up on my chart. Okay. Well, I have to be honest with you. The second I look at your chart, probably the thing that piques my interest the most, well, there's 2 or 3 things. Probably one is the fact that, now whenever I see these 0 to 3 degrees of the fixed signs, I immediately start kind of thinking about Pluto. So I start thinking about, okay, well, what's happening with Pluto, especially as this up and coming Mars-Pluto opposition is going to kind of hit again. So this will be something you're going to start to kind of see more so, as you're getting from like December into January, then you'll see this again right around mid-April. But yeah, Mars is going to turn retrograde, and it looks like not only is it going to go over an angle in your chart, which is very sensitive. Angles definitely bring up the effects of some new beginning, or, you know, something that's emerging or getting kind of worked out that pertains very much to the, in your case, the fourth house cusp. So the home, the family, the living situation, that kind of stuff. Emotions, also the past. It's also going to go right over your natal Mars. Okay. So you're going to have several Mars returns. So I'm going to probably kind of skip through them mostly for you and kind of show you what those look like and the dates that you really want to pay attention. And then the other thing that I think about is because you have 3 degrees Chiron, 0 degrees Mars in Leo, and 5 degrees Sun in Scorpio, the Mars retrograde is going to be from 6 degrees of Leo to about 7 degrees of Cancer. So when it is within that, you know, 6 to 29 degrees, which is territory it's already kind of gone through, this is going to be a chart that's going to get lit up like a freaking like firework. Okay. So I'll start by kind of going back and looking at when you started seeing these activations with your Mars return. I want you to think of a return as like playing with home field advantage. Okay. Even in spite of you having Mars retrograde, you know, activating the square and retrograding back and forth over your natal Mars, clearly it's giving you some, you know, opportunity several times to kind of unpack what's going on with your natal Mars, okay? And your Mars is at 0 degrees. So it does represent the very beginning when it comes to learning how to embrace and embody Martian energy. And Mars in Leo is very creative, it's very bold, it's very romantic, it's flirty, it's fun. And obviously, you know, with Mars being connected to your relationships and also being connected to things that are hidden or subconscious, it's wanting you to kind of work out maybe some like ancestral stuff going on with family. Maybe it's wanting you to go and deal with some like deep-seated emotions and some things that haven't been dealt with. Maybe it's trying to get you to work through some issues in regards to like home or family matters. But yeah, that's pretty significant that you're going to have several of them. So let's actually going to go ahead and look at that really quick. So I'm going to take you back in time here. We're going to go back and we're going to look at what has happened since Mars first came into conjunction with your natal Mars. So looking at like kind of like right around like November 3rd, November 4th. Now Mars had already been in shadow for like a month. I think Mars came into shadow at the beginning of October, if I remember correctly. So this is right around the time you were coming into your first Mars return. So if you're listening right now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to write down or just make a note, okay, whatever was happening around November 2nd, 3rd, 4th, you know, in my life. And when I say playing with home field advantage, it basically means the planet's coming into the sign that it was when you were born. So you're used to that energy. So in theory, you know, it's like, look, you've got Mars in Leo, you've got Sun in Scorpio, right? You've got a couple of things that's very similar to when you were born. So actually, I think things are kind of working in your favor. But retrogrades are meant to be a thing that when we come into the shadow, it's kind of letting us know like, hey, this thing is going to get worked out. This is having a problem. We're going to have to rework it. There's something to kind of unpack here. So it's going to get unpacked basically. And what you're unpacking is, well, where am I living and how do I feel? What's going on with my family? And, you know, where is there some unresolved stuff that kind of needs to kind of get worked out? So that's going to be your first sign in terms of that date. All right. So then we're going to see now Mars turn retrograde, and it's going to turn retrograde around the 6th of December. And it's not going to come back into conjunction with your Mars again until right around like the new year. So it looks like it's going to be right around like the 2nd through, let's say the 6th of January. Okay. So this is phase 2, and this is when it's going to retrograde, return, go back, rework, reorganize. And it's going from Leo, which is a fire sign, into Cancer, which is a water sign. So quite literally, it can mean that there is some back and forth in your communication with your family, right? 3rd house retrograde from the 4th into the 3rd. Maybe you're changing direction with something about a vehicle. Maybe you are reconnecting with a neighbor. Maybe you are trying to kind of hash something out with like a family member or a sibling. Just be mindful of that. And what's unusual about this retrograde is that, you know, in the pre-shadow, Mars is at 29 of Cancer. It opposed Pluto at 29, you know, of Capricorn. In the retrograde, Mars is going to oppose at about 1 degree, and it's going to oppose Pluto at about 1 degree. And then it's going to come back and it's going to oppose again, and that's going to be in mid-April. So you want to pay attention to what's happening at the beginning of January. Be like, where am I changing directions with things, or where am I learning how to kind of work through things? It's also a really good time with Mars retrograde in your 4th house to like have a plan, have something that you're working on, or like a to-do list, or fixing things up, or taking care of things at home. I would also say, just in your 3rd house, be very cautious or be very careful with driving. Because in some, like, I want to say it's Babylonian astrology. Some Babylonian astrologers actually connect vehicles to the 4th house. I'm not a Babylonian astrologer, but I have noticed when there's a retrograde from the 4th into the 3rd that, obviously touch wood, I see people have a lot of issues with vehicles. I see people have vehicles that break down. I see cell phones break. I see laptops fry, and Mars is heat. So it can be about things that are overheating. So you're going to want to watch that as well. And with Mars in opposition to Pluto, so it doesn't matter where it is, it creates pressure, right? Pluto says this thing needs to kind of like die off, or it needs to change, or it's kind of has control over you. And then the Mars retrograde in opposition is like, okay, how do we pull out of that tension? So obviously a little complex, but Pluto is at the top part of your chart, which basically means there is some significant, profound shift or change that's basically coming for your career. It could be coming for your status. So it could be like, I was an employee, now I own my own business. I was married, now I'm divorced. Something changing, revolving around your status out in the world. And it's like changing in regards to your relationship with more than one person, to like the masses or to a group of people. It could be people you work with, right? Anything like that. And Mars in opposition to Pluto means that there's a tug of war going on between kind of like your inner world and who you are on the inside versus your outer world and like the face that you put on, or how you kind of portray yourself. And it might mean that there's something going on at home or within the family that needs to be kind of worked on, and it might need to be like organized, or you need to kind of go back and you need to heal it. So that way you can feel like bigger, better, stronger, and more capable when it comes to being out in the world and working or being productive, And for some people, like for Scorpio risings and Leo risings, a lot of this is kind of like there's something that's going on at home that's affecting career. There's something going on in career that's affecting home. Now, it could be as simple as, well, of course, I'm relocating for a job, or I hate my job and I need to, change it or make a change. Therefore, it's going to impact kind of my home or my family life. So these things can come up too. The 10th house and the 4th house are also very much connected to parents. So I would say like there can be things going on revolving around parenting or like relationships to parents. And obviously, it's squaring your Chiron in the midst of this. Pluto is squaring your Chiron and Mars is squaring your Chiron, which will most likely bring up some kind of pressure within the body. It can bring some stress up. It can be bringing up the need to heal something. Chiron on the ascendant is no stranger to having physical ailments or issues. That can be like with the throat, the thyroid, the self-esteem, things pertaining also to like how you're eating and like what you're consuming. So be mindful of like the changing of circumstances at home and also within your kind of work that's putting pressure on the body, and like it can make some like things feel like a little bit more so inflamed, or it can make you feel more sensitive, or just like the pressure of being like, man, it's hard for me to maintain my equilibrium when I'm kind of getting pushed and pulled into different directions with these situations in my life. And like taking time to really focus on yourself and heal is very important in that process. Self-esteem issues can come up, money issues can come up also with like Chiron being in Taurus, as it is connected and associated with self-esteem, resources, stability, money, right? Food stuff. So you want to make sure that you're really nourishing yourself the way that you need to. You're taking time to kind of heal. And then obviously on the back end, it's squaring your sun, which is your 4th house ruler of home and family. So I look at this and I go, what's going on? Like, is there a home issue that's going on? Or there's some pressure with a family matter and, it's kind of impacting something about your relationships or vice versa. The sun rules your 4th house. So it can be like the relationship that you have with like a male family member, like a father, husband, brother, grandfather. And there is this back and forth that you're kind of doing, right? And so in a way, it's almost as if the Mars retrograde is prepping you, it's priming you for the fact that, Pluto is going to be squaring your sun, basically. You're coming into your transit Pluto square sun, where there is some significant need to kind of totally radically change and evolve, especially your identity. The sun is the identity. out of feeling like, you know, you are in relationships with people who try to control you, right? Sun Pluto can be about people trying to control you or manipulate you. Learning not to define yourself based off of who you're in relationship with or who you're with, or, you know, who wants you or who needs you, or, you know, it's kind of like learning how to stand on your own 2 feet as Pluto goes into the 10th house. And there can be some challenges and power struggles just with men in general with Pluto square the sun. The other thing that you're going to want to watch is that then Mars is going to go back into Cancer, which honestly is a little bit more friendly for your chart because it's going to be like, you know, sextiling your moon. So communication is going to be emphasized, and, you know, talking about your feelings and maybe learning something different or reworking the way that you communicate or connect with people. And simultaneously, it's going to trine Saturn. So I look at this and I'm like, you really need community. You really need support from others. There's a huge focus on, you know, maybe traveling and connecting with people, learning and connecting with people, you know, making phone calls, you know, talking to people about, you know, how you're feeling and getting feedback to be able to kind of better work through this. And then Mars will go direct, and that's going to be in February, closer to the end of the month. And it's going to finish up by coming back into a conjunction with your Mars. Okay, so this is going to start around like mid-April. And this is your 3rd Mars retrograde. And then right after it comes into conjunction with Mars, it opposes Pluto, which is going to be right around the end of April. And then it's going to square your sun, which that's pretty intense. I'm looking at especially like, let's say the 26th of April until, let's say, roundabout May 2nd. And that's quite literally because the Mars is going to square the sun, oppose Pluto, come in, you know, square the transit sun, and then it's going to be complete. And then Mars comes out of shadow. So whatever you've been working on or reworking or revisiting or clearing out or what have you, starts to kind of ease up as we're getting into the end of April, beginning of May of 2025. I mean, it's freaking crazy, guys. I keep telling everybody, it's not going to feel like the new year until the end of April. Okay. It's just not. Between eclipses, retrogrades, and this Mars retrograde, forget it. And those times, okay, so think about what was happening like closer to the beginning of November, the beginning of January, which is coming, and then kind of the mid to the end of April. Something is getting worked out about your home life. And, you know, sometimes Mars in the 4th house, it can be a little, it can be combative. Like if you have roommates, if you have kids, if you have partners, there can definitely be a sense of there being some conflict in the home. So my advice is watch out for things revolving around heat and fire. This could also be like electrical stuff. Be very careful with that in your home. Find ways to stay busy and be working on things so you can kind of diffuse the energy so you're not having conflict with others. And I would also say that this might be about, you know, going and cleaning out like closets and attics and things that are hidden, and like decluttering and like donating and getting rid of stuff. It may also be a time where, you know, you're trying to figure out like what direction you may be going with home or living situations. And if you get frustrated, you kind of get agitated, you know, going for a walk, going for a jog, going for a bike ride, journaling, right? Anything like that to kind of get moving can help you kind of deal with this energy a little bit better. Okay. So that seems pretty significant for me. You got all those triggers right there, you know, they're all kind of getting hit at the same time. So those squares are basically saying, all right, are you going to be the victim, right? Chiron on the ascendant, or are you going to, you know, confront people and basically like tell people what's up, which I can see that you have the capabilities of being able to do that. Sun, Mercury, Uranus in the 7th, you know, but so much of like the Uranus opposition that has been brewing for the last couple of years is like going from being in a place where there's been a lot of like instability with other people or unpredictability with other people or feeling like other people are kind of erratic, to you now like leaning more so into the opposition, being like, I need stability. I need to regulate my nervous system. I need peace. I need to be grounded, you know, and also I need the freedom to like not let other people dictate what's going to go on. So this is the finale of, you know, how that's going to be impacting either your status out in the world professionally, or how that's going to be impacting something about your home. So yeah, this is going to be like, it's going to go off with a bang, basically. So report back and let me know, what happens with those time periods. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Let's see, who else do we have here? Thanks, Gaba. Hey, Robbie. Thank you for letting me know. I mean, I've had a Mars retrograde in my fourth that I can remember. It's a difficult one, especially for the fixed signs. Those early degree fixed signs, they're getting hit, man. You're welcome. Avoid like candles and like the color red and stuff in your house. That's something else I would say. Like bring in blues and creams and silvers and other things. Like a way to diffuse some of the Mars retrograde energy and conflict is like bringing in colors and like the element of water, mirrors, things like that. That's going to kind of neutralize some of that stuff. All right. So we have got Miranda. Let me pull her up. What's up, Miranda? She says, I forgot to include my info. I got you. 10/8/93 at 9:30 a.m. in Henderson. So your Scorpio rising, sun in Libra, and your moon is in Cancer. I feel stagnant and stuck. I can't seem to muster up energy. I'm confused. What's next? Am I just lonely? Is something new coming? Do I need to hold on a bit longer? What do I need to change to feel excited again? I have an interview next week. Maybe a new position will help. Well, let's see. What year are you in? So you just had your birthday. So you're in an 8th house year ruled by Mercury. Yeah, welcome. What's going on? I know we have some new people here. All right, here's the deal. Okay, so just kind of looking at your chart. Let me just look at this. It's easier for me to look at it this way. So you're Scorpio rising. So you're ruled by obviously Mars and Pluto. Pluto just recently went into Aquarius. It's not in your 4th house yet, so maybe this is about a shift in regards to like your frame of mind. And then Mars, which is also your co-ruler, is kind of hanging out right now in the 9th house. So, you know, like I'm a Placidus reader. If you watch my videos, I do everything whole sign, so it seems kind of weird, but I feel like Placidus is more accurate for like transits. So not to confuse you, you're a Scorpio rising. Definitely listen to Scorpio. You got to know where Mars is. You got to know where Pluto is. But your transits resonate a lot with what's going on with the Sagittarius rising, okay? So you may want to go and listen to my Sag rising horoscope. But for right now, there's a couple things that kind of come to mind. Number one is, so there's a technique that I use called annual perfections. This is just a fancy way for saying each year there's a house that gets activated, okay? So you're in an annual perfection year 8. And this will run until October of 2025. So this is a Mercury-based year. That is the ruler of your 8th house. And the 8th house is about change, transformation, regeneration. You know, so when you say like, I feel stuck, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where I'm going, you know, I need to make a change, but I don't know how. I feel like an 8th house year, be careful what you wish for, okay? Because things happen. But when I look at your natal 8th house ruler, it's traditionally in your whole sign first, which means, you know, where intention goes and thought goes, what you actively think about doing, changing, working on can quite literally happen because you have Mercury conjunct Mars, which means that you have to almost be like Thomas the Train. Like you have to be telling yourself constantly like, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Because when you combine that energy of Mars and Scorpio, which is very powerful, it's very, especially when it's conjunct the ascendant, it knows where it wants to go, right? But in the 12th house, you're just kind of like, you have to feel your way into it. But the Mercury Mars is coming up with an action plan more intuitively, coming up with an action plan more mentally, and then being like, okay, like, you know, I'm going to visualize it. I'm going to meditate on it. I'm seeing and I'm feeling and experiencing it. And then like, that's where the magic happens. So this year, you're going to learn that. And you're going to learn that when you have transits in your 8th house. So like right now, Jupiter is retrograde there. So there's a lot of reflecting on change and what you want and what you don't want, right? And, you know, Jupiter right now is in the whole sign 8th house, but it's squaring Saturn. So there's this sense of like, is there ever going to be a change? What do I need to change? What's going to make me happy? And then there's this whole like reevaluation kind of going on for you right now. In your 2nd house, where you're having a Mercury retrograde, where you're trying to figure out like what you do value, or how you could make money, or what's going to potentially make you happy, or what's worth investing in. I think a lot of Scorpio risings will have a change in their career. I think it's been kind of brewing just generally since the summer, with like a Mercury retrograde that happened in Leo. Now you've got Mars, your chart ruler, that will be turning retrograde in Leo, but it'll be pretty much retrograde for the most part in your 9th house, which means this is where you go, okay, I'm reevaluating and I'm rethinking about what do I believe in? And it's not just Scorpio rising. Scorpio suns are doing this. I'm seeing Scorpio moons doing this. And kind of the general overall horoscope with a Mars retrograde from your 10th to your 9th is, do you change direction in your career? You might want to go back and look at what happened, at the beginning of, I believe it was 2009. The last time that we had this retrograde. There was one in 2009. I think there was one that was like closer to 2010. A changing direction in terms of where you're putting your energy when it comes to your career. In the 9th house, it's more like, well, do I need to go back to school and do some training? Do I need to connect with a mentor? Or do I need to find a teacher? Do I take a program? Do I get a certification? Do I take a trip? Do I, kind of go on vacation for a little bit? That kind of stuff can happen. And it will briefly dip into your 8th house. So I could see this as being like, well, I might have a change in direction with my career, but if I want to make more money, it's going to require you to negotiate with this new employer. Or it's going to be about you going like, well, I'm realizing if I really want to change direction and if I want to potentially really focus on, going in a different direction altogether, I might need to go back to school or get a certification or get a degree. Not everybody will have that experience, but for you, Mars will not only trine Saturn, so I feel like it can definitely help you figure out what your goals are in the long term, but it's also trining, Pluto in your ascendant. So it's about saying like, I'm open to change. You're going to want to watch Mercury retrogrades this year. So like you're having one right now in your 2nd house of money. You're going to have another one that's going to be taking place that will be happening in Aries. So it's going to be down here. And this will be in the spring, kind of like March and April. That'll be a time where there could potentially be another scheduling change or a job change. So that's possible. And then you will have another one that's going to be happening in the summer next year. And that's going to be happening in like July. Also in Leo. So it could be connected to a change. But these changes are brought on by you going like, yes, I can. It is possible. I will do this. Which is not always the easiest thing for you, believe it or not. I mean, you do have Sun conjunct Jupiter, which is generally a pretty lucky kind of conjunction. It means that you get lucky with the people that you work with or the people that you know. But your 10th house ruler, which is the Sun, while it's conjunct Jupiter, it squares Uranus and it squares Neptune. So that tells me that there's this constant like fluctuation and change revolving around what you value and the kind of work that you're doing and whether or not you get bored. Usually hard squares with Uranus and the Sun mean that you need change. You need things to be kind of shaken up or kind of changed up a little bit. You would do well with that square, maybe doing something that is going to be like more entrepreneurial or doing something that's going to promote travel, as this is in your whole sign 3rd house, or a change in your daily routines and kind of like how you kind of connect with people. So I do think that, the job change is very, very possible. We would need to see something kind of going on with your Sun. But what we do see happening is Mars is going to turn retrograde. We're going to see Jupiter go direct. This is going to be in February. And Jupiter is going to start coming into a trine with your Sun. So I could definitely see a job change happening, if not sooner. I would say between that retrograde and this trine, sometime like I would say, early February of 2025. And then you're going to have an eclipse. That's going to be right on your Venus. This will be in March, mid-March. Okay. So that's another indication that there's some kind of significant change that's going to be happening in regards to your relationship with other people and also your career. So I think it's pretty safe to say that's going to happen. And also it's like a Libra, where Saturn is 6 houses away from your Sun. So it does represent being like, okay, there's, I'm bored, or, I don't have an established routine and I need to change something about my work routine, or like, the kind of work that I'm doing and finding something more fulfilling. The one thing that you're going to want to watch is that Mars is going to go retrograde back into your 8th house. So this is like a time that you do want to definitely pay attention to what's going on with your money, finances, investments, things like that. That's something that I would really kind of watch. especially as you're getting into like mid-January. And that could also indicate if you change jobs, there's something that changes about your benefits, or there's something that changes about your insurance, or maybe there's some kind of shift that happens in regards to like your, just like the negotiation process for like your salary. Like you might move into a job where they offer you some kind of perks or other things, and you're deciding if that's something that you want to take, or you're negotiating to be able to get, that or better. That's the other way that I would kind of look at that. But is a change coming? Yeah, for sure. You're also just wrapping up having had Uranus in your 7th house, which definitely brings a lot of changes, that's kind of going on for you in regards to relationships. But it's coming out of that opposition with Pluto, where you maybe have felt like, through interaction with other people, it's been kind of like pushing you to kind of, change and evolve and like get out of like old patterns. Like Uranus Pluto oppositions will do that. And simultaneously, it's been square Saturn. So that's not an easy opposition and a T-square to be dealing with. It almost looks like there's been a lot of emotional pressure or some kind of emotional turmoil or something like that that's limiting you from being able to kind of like really evolve, So that in itself is like reason to celebrate, because if you have felt like relationships haven't been stable, or that there's been tension with your family, or like lots of issues revolving around the stability of like your living situation, that's all going to ease up now. And like, that is definitely one gnarly T-square that you've kind of had going on. So now that's getting ready to kind of shift, and you're definitely going to feel some relief from that. And then finally, I would just say that like, probably my favorite thing about the Scorpio risings for 2025 is that, if you missed the window of opportunity in summer of 24 to change your job, if you missed your window of opportunity, in the Mars retrograde that's coming up to change your job, then you're going to have a solar eclipse, and that's going to be in your 6th house next year, whole sign, which could be promoting like a new job coming in. And then you're going to see Mercury and Venus retrograde into your 5th. I'm going to tell you something. A lot of Scorpio risings are going to be like taking time off of work, or taking a step back from work, or doing what you have been doing for some time to kind of like create space to feel inspired, or to travel, or to take a course, or to learn something new before you kind of calibrate and figure out where you're going, can be really beneficial for you guys. It can be really, really helpful. And you'll come back into the spring, and you'll be a little bit more so refreshed, and you'll be like, okay, now I know what I want to do, or now I'm going to start my own business, or like now I'm going to get into something that I really love, because those retrogrades will go from the 6th house placement to work and service into the 5th house, which is going to be more about what you love doing and taking a chance and, taking a risk and maybe doing something that, is kind of a little bit more independent. But for some of you guys who are willing to go in a new direction that's more creative, it will be more fulfilling, I guess is kind of like the point that I'm getting at. So anyway, I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight. I'll tell you 33 is generally a pretty big year for changes with your career as well. So usually there's this build up from about 30 to 33 because of your annual perfections. And I would say looking at your chart, it's very much this year about embracing change. Next year, it's going to be more about, okay, what am I learning? And then 33 is going to be like the year where everything kind of starts to kind of come together, right? So anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you. Good luck. All right. So who else do we have here? We have got Claire, and then we've got Melissa. And I know we've got a couple people who said they wanted to jump in and get a reading. So it looks like we're gonna leave the queue open for a little bit longer. Just want to say thank you to all of our members, people who are joining. Welcome to the channel. Just as a reminder, there's 3 different levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3 is what gets you a reading once a month. Unless you just want to join memberships, you can just do that. You can support me as a full-time content creator. I appreciate it. All right, so we have got Claire. What's up, Claire? Let's see what Claire says. All right, so this is March 16th, 75. She says, question about to acquire premises for a business set to open in the spring. How is this going to go? Application for premises took place before Mercury retrograde, roughly September 2024. I'm likely going to be sleeping when the live is on and we'll do a replay. Okay, so Claire, if you are here, which I don't think you are, but if you are here by any chance, let me know, because I'd like to know what kind of a business this is, because spring can be a little dicey depending on when you're going to be launching it. Okay, so looking at your chart, let's make this equal, just so it's a little bit easier to see here. Sometimes we got to do that. There we go. All right. So you're a Gemini rising, sun and Jupiter in Pisces, and your moon is in Taurus. Okay. So if we look at your 10th house, Pisces, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on for Gemini risings in this next year. You guys have the North Node going into your into your 10th house, which is going to be putting a real emphasis on growth and kind of going into a new direction and focusing on responsibility and like long-term goals and like kind of building your public reputation, out in the world, which is a big deal if you have your sun and your Jupiter there. So there's something really big about you kind of stepping into that position, especially in the new year when the North Node conjuncts those two planets. You've got an eclipse that happened recently in September, which I feel like kind of kicked off this energy where you were preparing to get ready to go into this phase in the spring. You are going to be having eclipses that are going to come up in the spring again, but these eclipses are going to be happening in Virgo, and they're going to be happening in Aries. So you're going to have an eclipse in your 4th house, and then you're going to have an eclipse in your 11th house, which could be indicating that this is going to be a time that's about bringing, the business together and working with a group of people, maybe hiring people and having to kind of collaborate with others. But even if you look at this eclipse, the first one in Virgo, which is in the 4th house, conjunct the South Node, it's almost like pushing you out of your house. It's like you got to get back into work, or you're going into a physical space. The ruler is going to be about to turn retrograde in the 11th, going into the 10th. So it is trying to get you in March to be very much like out in the world, working, being seen, being a leader or a manager of some kind. And then you're going to see the second eclipse, which is going to come in 2 weeks later. And that one's going to be in Aries, right on the cusp of the 11th house. And the ruler is Mars, and Mars is in the 2nd house of money. So it's kind of like we got to get things going, all while Mercury is retrograde, Venus is retrograde, eclipses are happening in your 10th house. Part of me feels inclined to tell you that like March is almost going to feel like a roller coaster. And this is more so general, okay? Like everybody on the planet is going to see eclipses and retrogrades, in the last degrees of Pisces, and everybody's going to be like, oh my God, this thing's ending. And then something new is going to be born from that, basically. So for you, I think it's like, who you're working with and like what kind of a team you're building or who you have support with, what your goals are, what are you sticking to them? It could also mean that there are some setbacks, some delays, right? Like truth be told, people will come to me and they'll say, well, when is the best time to launch a business? And I will look at their astrology, comb through it, like literally pick the best day and the best time to be like, okay, go turn the open sign on or launch your website at this time, even if it's like at 3 a.m, because the dates and the aspects of the chart of when you open a business, they matter the same way it matters when a baby is born or when you get married or when you sign a contract. So what I can tell you is that if you have some wiggle room or some flexibility in a perfect world, you're doing these things, launching the business, that kind of stuff after the eclipses, which are going to be mid-March and the end of March, after the Mercury retrograde, which is quite literally, in the 10th house of business. So it looks like Mercury is going to go direct right around April the 8th. And after Venus goes retrograde, which is going to be closer to what appears to be kind of the 14th, the 15th. So if you're listening to this, my advice is that you either do something like maybe around the full moon in Libra. Okay, so this will be a full moon in Libra ruled by Venus, and Venus is conjunct Saturn at the top part of the chart. damn, what a powerful moon that is going to be for people who really want some kind of long-term commitment, or like they're committing to business, or they feel like now the business is ready to go. That would be the time. Okay, so you say spring. So some people are like, well, still kind of, it's springtime actually in April. So I would be aiming for something like that. The other option is that Jupiter is the ruler of your 10th house. So you could see, where there's another aspect going on with Jupiter. Obviously, this is going to be later. Okay, but you could do something like, and this is later. You could do something like right after the new moon in Gemini. So it looks like the new moon's going to be like around 6 degrees. And maybe you wait until like the moon goes into Libra and it trines Jupiter and it trines Mercury, right? Which are coming together. So this is going to be closer to June. All right. But like Mercury's not retrograde. Your chart ruler is about to turn, to a new degree. We're also going to see Jupiter go into Cancer. It'll conjunct Mercury. So that could also be good for business around June 10th. Granted, they're squaring Saturn and Neptune. So I would say not that day. But those are the dates that I would kind of work with based off of this chart. And I would still be curious what kind of a business it is. I think what I would do and what I will do, and I will encourage other people to do during like the kind of March, April time, this is a time where we want to go and get things in order. And it sounds weird because the retrograde's happening, but like we can actually, with a retrograde in the 10th house, be like, we can prepare things for the business. We can get the advertising ready to go. We can train the staff. We can go in and we can set up the space. We can start creating all the, kind of like logos. Like Mercury and Mars will retrograde into Pisces, which is a very creative sign. And it will come into conjunction with the North Node, which means it's more about where we're going and our vision for the future. And it's going to come into contact for you with your Sun and also your Jupiter. So I think this would be a time where you're like, maybe creating websites, having meetings, getting things ready, kind of preparing for, launches and having meetings and stuff. And I think that you can use that time very wisely. But I do think that what's working in your favor this year is that you are going to be having the North Node on your Sun. So, and the Sun is the ruler of the 3rd house, right? Where the Mars retrograde is. So it's trying to get you to slow down and focus more on communication and connecting with people and like signing contracts and like agreeing to things and finding new ways to kind of connect. So if you're doing that, yeah, I feel like it can be really quite successful. But I'm going to be honest with you, the businesses that I've seen, just observing, I'm not talking about like clients. I'm talking about like, I have lived places where I have been like, oh, Mercury is about to turn retrograde. Venus turns retrograde. Venus is money, relationships, luxury, anything in regards to beauty. When Venus turns retrograde and Mercury turns retrograde, which is business, and I see businesses open, like I've seen them open on the street or whatever, some of my favorite stores have opened during Mercury retrograde or Venus retrograde. It could be 6 months, could be 2 years, but a lot of those businesses, they don't stay open, they fail. So that's the thing, like you want to make sure that Mercury, Venus, Mars, as a general rule of thumb, even Saturn, they're direct because we don't want to have a planet going retrograde, and all those planets will be retrograding in your 10th house. So what it wants you to do is really make sure that you're prepared and that you're ready to have that business launch. So if you can do it after mid-April, I would use that whole February, March, beginning of April time to kind of get prepared to launch the business. And it's definitely worth waiting for, trust me. Okay. Come back, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear what kind of a business it is. And hopefully it's as successful as your chart says it's going to be, but it says it's going to be successful because how you're going to lead. So it's something about you managing something, So wonderful, wonderful stuff. All right. Let's see. What else do we got here? All right. So now we've got Melissa. All right, so Melissa, do you want me to, I know you said you're having some issues, so I just want to let you know, It may be if you're watching on your phone, it could be the connection. But once this is no longer live, you will be able to come back and you will be able to watch the playback. So if you can't totally see me fully now, you will be able to see me down the road. Don't worry. Okay. Hi, Coco. I just saw you. I will make sure I add you to my list right now. And I got Stephanie Todman. I got you too. All right, Melissa. So here's kind of what I'm thinking. All right. So usually when I have somebody that tells me, hey, I was born in the morning, but they don't know what time, I have a tendency to kind of look at the 6 a.m. chart. Okay. The only other backup option for me would be looking at the sun on the ascendant. If you're born January 10th, 1993, you have both of these things at the same time. Capricorn rising, sun on the ascendant. So we're going to go off of that. Because even if we don't know the ascendant, putting the sun in the first house is definitely going to give you some pretty good clarity revolving around what you got going on with your life right now. All right. So I have you here January 10th, 1993, and that was in Puerto Rico. So she says relationship stuff. Let's see. Let me go back. She left a couple comments up here. And what's in store with me for my love life? What's it looking like? Where is it heading? I need to know everything. What's up, Chelsea? All right, well, let's see if I can help you out here. It looks like you got a Capricorn sun and your moon is in Leo. All right, so we're going to look at this from the perspective of both the Capricorn sun and the Capricorn rising. Obviously, your life looks a little colorful right now, Melissa. I think I would say this to like any Capricorn. I don't like to like generalize because of like the sun sign, because I find that the ascendant can actually be more accurate. But for Capricorn rising, Capricorn suns, you know, you're in the shadow of Mars turning retrograde in your relationship house. That basically means for you, you know, since, I mean, like closer to October, you know, there's been something that's been kind of brewing revolving around action that's taking place in your relationships. Mars is very much connected to passion, drive, desire. It can be about masculine energy. It can be about sexy dudes. And Mars has been kind of debilitated in Cancer because it's not necessarily all about passion. Sometimes it's about emotions and working through some emotional situations and people giving you some emotional reactions. So the positive, because there is a positive, is that when planets are going through the opposite sign, oppositions create opportunities to come together with another person, okay? Now, why this has probably been frustrating for you is that the retrograde has been going on right around your natal Mars, which is retrograde in Cancer, by the way. When Mars turns retrograde on the 6th of December, it's going to pretty much fully still be in your 7th house. So the entire retrograde, Mars is basically saying, okay, December through February, you know, where are we going back, reevaluating, reworking something in regards to how we do relationships. Mars is also about your goals. It's about your friends. So it can mean that you're reconnecting with your friends more rather than focusing on your love life. It can mean that you've got friends trying to set you up with someone, or that somebody who's a friend, it could become something more. But I think it's been annoying, if you want my opinion. I think it's been annoying because it's been in opposition to literally all your freaking Capricorn planets. And it doesn't really matter if Capricorn is your rising or not. I think if you've got a stellium of planets in Capricorn, where Mercury, your mind, Uranus, which is your kind of independent sense of self, Neptune, your vision, the sun, which can be about your kind of your energy, your goals, your ego, like, you know, you are very Capricornian. You're very Saturnian, actually, because you've even got Saturn that is in a Saturn-based sign, and there's some mutual reception. So this is pretty common in like the late 80s, early 90s. It's not that unusual, people who have a lot of planets in Capricorn or Aquarius. Anyway, my thought process is, when I look at this, is that you know, a Mars retrograde in your 7th, clearly there's something to get worked out in relationships, even if it wasn't making these oppositions. And the need to kind of reflect on, okay, what's happened in the past, and like, where am I going forward, and how am I going to make different kind of decisions revolving around relationships. Quite literally, Mars also connects to your home. So it can mean that there's somebody who, returns to, connect with you, or they say, hey, I'm moving back, or you go home and you visit family, right? Because Mars rules family, and you reconnect with someone. Something like that can happen. So be mindful that that reconnection, the past coming back, is in the air. I'm not going to tell you to do it or not do it. I actually feel like I would be a hypocrite saying that. And I'm going to give you a really quick positive story of like a Mars retrograde experience. Like I had Mars retrograde in my 7th house like 5 years ago. And when Mars was going retrograde, like for me, it was more, okay, no more relationships. Don't want to have a relationship. Don't want to do that. And was making kind of different plans in my head about where I was going to go. And during that Mars retrograde, out of the blue, reconnected with somebody from my past who I hadn't spoken to in like 8 or 9 years. And now that person is my husband. So I'm not going to tell you that Mars retrograde in the 7th house is bad. I feel like retrogrades they're karmic. If you're meant to reconnect with somebody, you will. If they come back around, the question is it going to lose momentum? Mars, when it goes retrograde, is like a rocket. So there can be this sense of things speeding up and you can connect with somebody and it can be really good. But the question is, do they stick around when Mars actually turns retrograde? Do you start to kind of see the relationship trail off a little bit? My advice with the oppositions to your 1st house is that you kind of have to play hard to get. And I would give you that advice anyway, because you were born with Mars retrograde in opposition to your sun. You may naturally or inherently feel like life is difficult. You have to be alone. People are challenging. Relationships are hard. And that's because you have all these planets in a Saturn sign conjunct your sun, where there's a lot of reflecting on yourself and your time alone and like your life in opposition to Mars retrograde, which is just like, well, people don't necessarily give me what I need, blah, blah, blah. Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. I was hoping that it was one of the two, but I did not catch that. It's the 1st, right? Sorry, I had 2 dates for you. One said February, one said January. So, the point is that, and this isn't really all that different. So Mars is going retrograde in your 7th house. It's the same stuff. So the point is that you're going to want to be mindful of who or what comes back around during this time. Okay. In my opinion, when I look at your chart, I kind of feel like, if this were me, I would wait and see who shows up. Now, the problem is, and now that we know that it's February, the problem is you have this opposition to Pluto that's in your sun sign. So, Mars going retrograde in the 7th, somebody can return, but the opposition to Pluto is like, is it good enough for you, right? Is this going to be something that works for you? Pluto in your 1st house conjunct your sun or any of your personal planets means that you're going through a profound moment of change and transformation personally. So this is where it's a little bit different. The question is, how are people reacting and responding to you changing? That's what I would want to know. What are your non-negotiables? What are you no longer putting up with? What is it that you don't want anymore? What have you decided you personally have to change? And how is that impacting and either bringing people in or pushing people away, right? And like quite literally, Pluto in your 1st house, Mars in your 7th house. If you're in a relationship, it's almost harder. I don't like saying that, but it's almost harder because it makes me feel like that opposition that's taking place tells me that there can be some back and forth going on with another person who's not responding well to the fact that you're like, I am going through a profound shift, or, I'm feeling like I'm having a identity crisis, or, whatever. But so much of your astrology with your sun, Mercury, Saturn in the 1st house is like, this is a lifetime that's going to be more about you. I'm not going to say you can't be in relationships, you can. But it's obvious that relationships have brought you some pain. Saturn is your chart ruler. It opposes Chiron in the 7th. A Mercury retrograde that happened here over the summertime tells me that you have already been going through this process of either trying to heal relationship issues or trying to go back and forth with something, or maybe trying to kind of release someone. That retrograde went right over your Chiron, so it brought up those wounds. It opposed Saturn, which meant that you either needed to take some space or you felt like it was too difficult trying to connect with someone. And then it squared Pluto. So I wonder, just looking at that, like what's been happening for you since like July and August, because it looks very painful to me. And it looks like a situation where you're like, they haven't healed their stuff, or I keep attracting broken people, or, you know, feeling like whoever you've been going back and forth with has not been allowing you to be yourself or be authentic. And also makes you either feel disempowered, or it's getting in the way of you making some kind of career progress because it's been squaring your Pluto. Still, you were born with Mars retrograde in Cancer. So it's kind of like, I look at it and I'm like, well, you know, she's used to this energy. I would just say between your Mars retrograde connected to the 7th house, the ruler, which is the moon's at a critical degree, and the fact that Uranus is conjunct your 7th house lord for the next year tells me that anything is possible. There can definitely be some really unexpected people from the past coming back with Uranus and your moon here too, and Mars retrograde. Uranus on your moon's a whole other like bag of tricks. Like that's a transit where it does light up the ruler of the 7th house, because that's the moon, and it's at a critical degree, which means that there's going to be like a significant turning point revolving around romantic partners and going back and forth. This is at a 29, so it brings drama in relationships and romantic partnerships, but also Uranus going into the whole sign 5th, Jupiter in the Placidus 5th, and this being at 29 degrees. I mean, be very careful, because there is either this feeling that you're getting baby fever, or there can be like connecting and meeting with like romantic people who are younger and having like a love affair, and then there's like an unexpected pregnancy with Uranus on your moon and the Jupiter on your south node. Or that there is somebody who comes in with the Mars retrograde that's coming in because it's supposed to be helping you almost like kind of throw all caution to the wind and be like, I want to fall in love again. And then, you know, some younger kind of person pops in, and then, you know, you're able to do that. But until planets are no longer aspecting your moon, okay? You're born with moon in opposition to Pluto too. So until Uranus is off of your moon, relationships are not really going to stabilize quite yet. Here's the good news though. It's going to get really colorful in the spring when all of these retrogrades and things are done. And then the good news is that when you have a planet that is then positively aspecting, so for example, when Saturn is sextiling next year, relationships stabilize, and then Jupiter goes into your 7th. So, you know, to me, it looks like it ends well. Whatever the craziness is or the back and forth is right now, that sextile and that trine tells me the second half of 2025, your relationships are going to be a lot more stable. And I do think you're going to actually probably get into a relationship where you're moving to be with someone because that's going to trine your Venus. The other thing, hold on, what am I missing? Candace, her birthday, she said it was February 10th, not 1st. Are we having like a total Mercury retrograde moment here? I've like read it 3 times. Sorry. February 10th. I keep going back to the first thing that I saw. I was like, oh, it said the 1st. All right, let's look at this again. Total Mercury retrograde moment. Like, did you read it? All right, so Pluto's on your ascendant. And it's still connected to your sun sign. Mars is exactly retrograde on your 7th house cusp. And it is coming into a trine with the 2nd house. And the north node's on your Venus. So that means that, man, the sun conjunct Saturn. Do you date foreigners? Like, do you date people who are like culturally different than you or from a different place? I'm looking at your sun at 21, sun and Saturn in the 1st house. This is about learning to be more critical of the people who you choose. And I'm not saying this to criticize you, but if you have Saturn and the sun in the 1st, that means you choose your partner. It's up to you. And 21 is about what you learned from them, right? So they could be teachers, they could be travelers, they could be culturally different. There could be some cultural differences going on there. But Sun Saturn means that although you can be very cautious about opening up to people, at the end of the day, you're the one who makes the decision. You make the call, you know? So opposition to Chiron is still the same thing. This is wounding in regards to relationships with other people. But with the sun, square Pluto, power struggle issues, and it looks like you are going to have that Mars retrograde right on your descendant, right here. in opposition to Pluto. So that still applies, the are you changing or other people changing? And I feel like when we look at the opposition between Mars and Pluto, Pluto does not back down. It will not stop. It's going to throw Mars for a loop. So this period of the next couple of months is about putting your foot down, like not in a way where you're being combative, but in a way where you're like, if there are certain things that you no longer want to participate in, if there are certain things that you're wanting to change about your life, or you are not going to be tolerating in terms of people's behavior. I think I was thinking about this the other day because somebody made a comment on the channel. They were like, you must really not like Leos. And the more that I thought about it, I was like, I actually feel like Mars in Leo is my favorite placement. Of all of the people that I've met and interacted with, and whether it's clients, friends, relationships, whatever, I feel like Mars in Leo is my favorite placement. So I'm just going to let that be known. I feel like it's got the most swag, it's the most passionate, it's the most creative. I love that placement. However, one of the things that I think is coming up with this Mars retrograde is where the ego is having issues, where people are becoming too self-consumed, or people are too needy, right? Like when you see like Mars or Venus in like Leo, like they need a lot of attention. And if they're not getting attention, then they have a tendency to kind of like throw a tantrum, or when it's not all about them, you know, it can get kind of ugly. So when I look at Mars turning retrograde in the 7th house, where other people's actions or behaviors or their goals or their passions or their agenda is now coming back up for reevaluation, you know, you could have people that can be coming back to you being like, hey, I'm sorry I was such a jerk to you, you know, or I'm sorry that I didn't call you back, or, you know, I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance. And like, you got to make people work for it. That opposition to Pluto is like, it doesn't matter who comes back. You have to be very honest and very direct with people about how you have changed. And when you change, your relationship to other people changes as well. So I definitely feel like this is going to be a matter of you for the next couple of months really being cautious about who or what you're letting into your life. If you can go through this, you know, unscathed, which I definitely think is very possible, but, you know, kind of the peak periods are like early November, early January, you know, mid April. Those are going to be the times where you're going to see the heat. And you just want to be mindful that other people might be trying to rush things or push their agenda on you, or other people can come in very quickly, but it's up to you to change and transform how you react and you respond to these people. And if you're just going to go along with it, or if you're going to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. And for me, it's like slow and steady wins the race, because with Mars retrograde, you want to take your time in relationship. You don't want to be super focused on moving full speed ahead as quick as you can, especially knowing that, you know, Uranus is still squaring your sun. So it's still saying emotional upsets, home changes, lots of shifts with family, you know, feeling kind of destabilized and not stable, and how that impacts relationships. And that could be with family, that could be with romantic relationships you live with, that could be with roommates, that could be the country you're living in. And you have Uranus still square your sun and Saturn. So it's affecting your chart ruler, and it's also affecting your 7th house. This could also bring up issues with like family members as well. So it's not easy to get along with men under that square, but it's now starting to fade. And I feel like once we see something positive happening with your sun, which will be in the spring, Jupiter will trine your sun. This is now when things start to improve. Okay, so this is going to be around the end of April. Mars now goes into your 7th house. It can do its thing. Jupiter's trining your sun. It's focusing on romance and connection and creativity. And then you're also going to have Saturn, which is your chart ruler, coming into conjunction this next year, mostly 2026, with Venus, which is going to be all about like some stability in regards to your home or your living situation, right? So no more hard angles taking place with your sun, basically, is what I'm getting at. That's going to definitely improve things. But if you've spoken to an astrologer before, if you've talked to someone, probably the first thing that they would look at is they would go, oh, you've got your chart ruler in the 1st. This is a lifetime of learning about yourself in conjunct with the 7th house ruler. So relationships are here to test you. Relationships are here to teach you more about the relationship with yourself. It's kind of like a Libra rising chart. And the fact that the sun and Saturn are in the 1st house means that you're learning to basically go, I am my number one. I'm dating myself first. I'm committed to myself first. And not in a way that limits you from connecting with other people, but like knowing that if you're doing what's best for you, your body, your outlook, the way that you move through life, all of these things are going to be so much better. And you're going to learn not to lean into that opposition with Chiron where you're attracting wounded people, right? Even your Venus in opposition to Jupiter and the moon, you know, like lots of transformation in regards to who am I versus who am I with other people. And like when it's good, it's good. But when it's bad, with Sun, Saturn square Pluto, it's bad. And you can't be with people who are trying to overpower you or, you know, not make you feel like you have a say in your own life. Like you really don't do well, I think, with, people telling you what to do. I don't think you do well with like authority figures. Sun conjunct Saturn in a woman's chart is enough to be like, whether it's an experience you had with a boss or with a boyfriend or with a father, generally that's like people being kind of heavy or kind of critical. And then there in turn, you'll do that with yourself. But when it squares Pluto, then it's just like, man, you know, if you have people telling you what to do, you don't respond very well to that. And you have a tendency to kind of like internalize that. That's a really significant T-square. The beauty is with Pluto in your 10th house, it's like this is a placement of somebody who can, you know, change their identity in terms of their career a lot. They can go into a very powerful kind of direction with their career where they can help people transform. You can literally help people heal, right? And people may come to you for advice, Sun conjunct Saturn. So this is the chart of somebody who's dealt with enough kind of like trauma drama to know how to be able to kind of create the necessary boundaries and maybe even has had experience in like learning how to like counsel and kind of assist or help people in some capacity. But yeah, relationship stuff, man, if you have Mars, which is in the sign of romance and boyfriends and girlfriends and drama, turning retrograde right on your descendant, holy cow. I would be looking at specifically, I mean, you could say from the 6th, but I would say around about like December 11th through the end of December, that's going to be pretty heated. And then you're going to see another time when the sun's conjuncting Pluto, and then you see some hard angles. So like January 21st, and then obviously the full moon that you're going to have in Leo, square Uranus. So that'll be February 11th. Oh man. Right after your birthday, you're going to have quite a full moon here. That's going to activate your Chiron and your sun. And then the good news is that when we get into April and Mars is sitting on your descendant, I mean, it's at a 5. It means maybe then you're like, we can proceed ahead. You know, there's been enough of back and forth in a cat and mouse game that you get to about then and you're just like, if we're going to do this, then do it, but I'm not chasing you. Really go and learn about having Saturn and the sun conjunct in your first. I think that's, to me, that is the solution to everything. It helps you get out of the Pluto square. It helps you also lean into the trine with Jupiter and the moon, which is maybe working with metaphysics. It's working with, therapy. It can be working with some kind of support and insight about change and transformation with relationships and how to learn from that, become more emotionally, I think, kind of independent. So I hope that that's helpful in giving you some insight. Obviously, you are also in an 8th house year. So this is a year where there's more focus on what's going on with investing in yourself. But when you get into next year, okay, so when you have your birthday next year, you're going to move into your 9th house where you've got Jupiter and the moon, which could definitely be a big turning point in regards to relationships and like some serious commitment. And if you're, yeah, I would just say be careful what you ask for. I know that you're saying you have baby fever. I mean, Mercury also rules your 5th house. Jupiter's in your 5th house all year, okay? It's not in a fertile sign, but it's in your 5th house of children, trining your ascendant, trining your sun, trining Saturn. So obviously you want that. But it's squaring transit Saturn. So it's saying, okay, Saturn's in the 2nd house of money, resources, self-esteem, and it's squaring Jupiter. So it might mean, yeah, you want a kid, but there's a sense of being like, am I stable enough? Do I have the money? You know, can I handle it? Am I ready to do it? If you are, then by all means do it. But I think that the Jupiter-Saturn square is indicating that it's actually not the time to do that, at least in December. If this were me, I would say you want to look at a positive aspect going on with your 5th house ruler. I would at least wait until after the square in December. And I would wait for Jupiter to turn direct. So Jupiter is going to turn direct in February. And then you're going to have Jupiter going through your 5th house clear to about June. Okay. And in your chart, you're going to have the Sun and Jupiter meet in the 5th house in June. So could there be a pregnancy? Yeah, it'll square your natal moon. I find that the pregnancies are more found through the progress chart personally. But it does look like in your progressions, if you look at the transits, your progressed moon is connecting with the North Node over the next month. Actually, a couple of months. It looks like that's going to happen closer to February, March, April. And the Mars retrograde is in the 5th of children, trine Saturn. So it means like if you are doing it, you're taking your time or you're planning. And then for me, something about Saturn will sit on your sun and you'll have eclipses also in Pisces, which will impact your chart. Sorry guys, I think we're having some issues with the feed. I'll just give that a second. Let me know if you can hear me. It's weird because it looks fine for me. I'm not seeing anything delayed on my end, but maybe. Okay. I think we're here. Give me a thumbs up if you can see me. Sorry guys, Mercury retrograde moment. It's been consistent for me, so nothing's been delayed. So that's why I'm kind of like oblivious over here. But hopefully that's helpful for you, Melissa, and giving you some insight. Thank you for your patience. I apologize for that. All right, so we've got Coco. Give me a thumbs up if you guys can see me. All right, cool. Where is the moon right now? That's in Scorpio. All right. All right, so we've got Coco. Cool. Sorry about that, guys. All right, Coco says, hi, Candace. I'd like to look at my natal return. Have been feeling blue lately and curious about my future, especially regarding love and money. Very Saturnian. Always seems like a cloud hovering despite what I do. Looking for good news in my upcoming Master 22 for year. All right, so it looks like your return is going to be on the 1st in Los Angeles. So let's look at that. And you're wanting to look at your solar, I'm assuming? So it looks like it's tomorrow. Your actual birthday will be tomorrow night. So just a heads up about that. Around 10:53 p.m. LA time. So you got a Virgo rising this year at a 1. So you're initiating and focusing more on health and healing, especially within the body and the actions that you're taking in regards to habits, productivity, that kind of stuff. Really interesting that the ruler is retrograde at the time of the solar return. And your solar return is happening like right at the moment of the new moon, okay? So when you have a new moon in your birthday, you're planting seeds that you're basically going to see for the better part of like the next several years evolve. So you can go and look at some of your other solar returns down the road, and within the next couple of years, you'll see a full moon that's going to coincide with your birthday with about 24 to 48 hours. That's the year where things are going to complete and kind of conclude. So you're planting seeds this year, basically. The new moon obviously is at home because the moon likes being in the 4th house. So it's saying, okay, for the next year, there's going to be setting intentions revolving around new home, living, family situations. Obviously, this is a double dose of Sag because it's also at a 9. So it's kind of like, how can we improve? How can we expand? How can we travel? How can we be more optimistic? And it's happening with the ruler retrograde coming into conjunction slightly. It's a little wide. It's about 11 degrees, but coming into conjunction with the moon. And the moon is the ruler of the 11th house of friends and goals and also networks. So to have like the sun in the 4th house, I mean, you always want to assess where the sun is because it's going to tell you where, you know, your focus is primarily going to be for the year. But you also want to look at the ruler and see how the ruler is aspected. So the ruler is retrograde there. So it tells me that you're like going, hold on a second, I need to really rethink, you know, do I like where I'm living? Do I want to stay here? Do I want to go somewhere new? There is a sense of also dealing with home and family stuff and things from the past. Mercury obviously is in a sign that is a bit debilitated in Sagittarius, right? The positive is that Mercury in Sag is like anything is possible. The challenge of Mercury in Sagittarius is because it thinks anything is possible, or it might be too optimistic. It can sometimes like bite off more than it can chew. So I would say in the realm of, oh, I can relocate or I can move or, you know, I can make some changes, like be optimistic, but also like be realistic about what you can and cannot change. The more that, you know, that I think about the 4th house, this is also very private. And this is a house that's about like reflecting on things. So when you talk about like a heavier mood, it makes sense with like the new moon in the 4th house. It's like, okay, what do I need to be kind of digging deep and like working on within myself or like privately behind the scenes in my own life if I want to get out into the world more, right? The opposition to Jupiter. If I want to be in a relationship, Jupiter, if I want to expand my career, right? All of these things. And then Jupiter also is in a sign that, you know, it's debilitated in because it's the opposite sign of where it's associated, Sagittarius. So there's mutual reception. It's basically saying with both of these planets retrograde and in each other's sign in opposition to each other, there's a sense of being like, I want to change my home. Maybe I find, you know, a better job, or like, you know, actually, no, I like where I'm living, but, you know, maybe I need to make some change over here. And so something about the reworking and the rethinking of either your career, your identity, or your professional life is going to have a pretty significant, profound shift when it comes to your home and your emotions as well. And then you take it a step further, and it's also about big ideas, big concepts, big changes, big announcements, a big reworking on an emotional level of realizing like what needs to be let go in order to kind of get out into the world and like have new opportunities and new beginnings with relationships as well as your career. And then obviously Mercury is in a slight square to Saturn, Jupiter's in a slight square to Saturn. So Saturn in the 7th house means that there's both the blessing and the burden of dealing with other people this year, and like where other people can like help you through commitment and like consistency kind of reach new heights when it comes to your career, but also they could, you know, present you with some challenges maybe in, you know, your home or your, you know, your relationship to your family. So Saturn does represent romantic partners, lovers, children, younger people. So there can be a little bit of a back and forth that you're doing with somebody that you're dating this year. And they may be living in one place and you may be living in another. Or there can be this conversation revolving around, are we going to, you know, do some kind of domestic living situation in this next year? Are we going to commit to each other in a bigger way? And like that would be the status change of Jupiter square Saturn. Like I just think about like the Virgo risings that I've been like talking to recently, like the last 6 months, and a lot of them are like either quitting a job and relocating, or they got offered a job and they're deciding if they want to leave, but because of the squares to their 7th house, they're dating somebody and they don't want to leave them. Or, you know, now they're seriously committing in a relationship and moving in with somebody or having a kid or getting married. Or some of them are going, you know what, the relationship's not working. So the retrograde is we're moving. So the truth is going into this year, like not owning a home, not being married, like having flexibility and the ability to make changes in your status and also your living situation and your relationships is like amazing, because it's going to be a lot easier, and I think it's going to present you with a lot more opportunity to kind of figure out what you want. Coco says, yep, crazy family and finding a new home stuff, can't change my mom. So, you know, part of the Mercury retrograde is like, yeah, I'm giving up on the idea that I have to change my mother. I'm more focused on what's going on like with who I am out in the world or my relationship to other relatives. You're going to find that the year is going to feel very much like, you know, because it's starting in December. Okay, I want to start fresh right now. Where am I going? Where am I living? And think of the 4th house as like the foundation for the home that you're going to, you know, build a house on, right? Like you want to make it with cement. You want it to be solid. You don't want it to be made with popsicle sticks and sand. So a lot of this is, what do I need to do emotionally? What do I need to do with my family? Or what do I need to do with my home to provide me with that support? And then everything will be built upon that. you'll get to about February, March, April. It's going to be more about dating, relationships, and like, you know, how you're connecting with other people, and like maybe some big turning points with relationships or commitment. And then you're going to get to about the summertime when it'll be like May, June, July. And then that's going to be more about career. And obviously the success of that career change and that growth will be built upon a strong emotional foundation, you know, whether or not you're in the right relationship, you know. And unfortunately, like, I look at this and I'm like, you can't have everything. You know, that's part of how the square works. Some relationships with Saturn in your 7th will be stunted because it wants you to work through some of the emotions and not just smooth it over in a relationship. And it also wants you to be more so focused on what's going on with your career. Doesn't mean you can't have one. I'm just, you know, being honest with you. The other thing I would think about also is that, you know, you have a new moon that trines Mars. This is round about the degree Mars will retrograde, but it's not retrograde yet. It won't be until the 6th. But this trining Mars means that it's trying to help you clear out some stuff subconsciously. Could be ancestral stuff, could be frustration, could be, you know, kind of spiritual blockages. And you've got a fire trine in this chart. So when you say things like, I'm kind of losing that pep, I don't know what I'm doing, I feel kind of like the Saturn cloud, I would be like, girl, Mars in the 12th house is dancing, drumming, percussion. It would be, you know, red light therapy. It would be hot saunas, infrared lights. It would be anything revolving around cord cutting, burning, incense, you know, like things where we're going to get things moving. That fire trine all year long, you'll be able to tap into that. The thing is that the fire trine is in water houses. These are in houses that are about endings, conclusions, completion. So there's the sense of being like, just hurry up, let's get it over with. You know, if this thing needs to end, let's keep it moving. If that needs to, you know, come to a completion, great. If I need to let this go, awesome. Get into the habit of maybe writing things down and burning it. Even your Mercury is at an 8, right? Or it's at a 20, so it's a Scorpio degree. So it's basically about, you know, what needs to change, what needs to come to an end, what do you need to complete, you know, what's over and done with. And so start writing those things out. I'm releasing this, I'm letting this go. You know, this is no longer serving me. And it can be just, maybe you're doing that regularly until some of these emotions and these feelings like start to kind of subside. But I think that you're literally burning stuff off and you can tap into that basically all year long. And I think probably the most exciting thing is that when I look at the dispositor of these planets where you're having the new moon, it's Jupiter, and Jupiter's in the 10th house, which means like for all the things you're willing to rework or let go or release or, you know, kind of like undo, you're going to receive so much more, right? You're going to receive like more career growth, better relationships, like more joy. I mean, your Jupiter's at a 17. It could be more creativity, more love, right? And like, you're going to feel like you're getting kind of pulled from all different directions. But I think at the end of the day, you know, Saturn in the 7th doesn't have to mean that there's just like crappy relationships all year. Saturn in the 7th could mean you work with a therapist, you talk to your astrologer, you've got a counselor, you've got a coach, like you've got somebody who you work with spiritually. It's at a 12, who helps you kind of maybe get out of your past emotional habits and patterns. And they ask you questions about how you've handled things previously. And like, if you want to be more open-minded or consider that, hey, there could actually be a change, that would be the square to Jupiter. You can find somebody who can kind of help you unpack some of this stuff. So that way you feel like you're more so in control of like your destiny and your future, and that you're not limited or stuck in the past. You got to be really careful with a new moon like this, because it's very ripe with the opportunity for new intentions. And unfortunately, with Mercury retrograde in the 4th, it's like you're looking at the past being like, okay, am I going to repeat these past patterns? And if you set that intention during the new moon where you're kind of going back to what you've always done, you're not going to get out of it. It's going to be like tar. You're going to get stuck there. So you want to really be constantly thinking about, how do I move forward? What have I learned from the past? What experiences have I had? What have they taught me? Okay, great. Getting out of that. You know, that's what I would do personally with a new moon like that. Let me look at it with your natal chart. And then obviously all your Capricorn settles into your 5th. So it is a big year for creativity, you know, could be inner child work, that kind of stuff as well. And also for dating. And then it looks like you've got your Mercury return that's been happening. So the Mercury retrograde right over your natal Mercury. Let's see, what house is that happening in? Okay, so that's happening like right along your midheaven. So really, the Mercury retrograde as a Pisces rising is more about, well, what's shifting, revolving around like my goals and my career. And who am I? Mercury rules the seventh. Who am I in relation to other people? I feel inclined to tell you, like, at least as a Pisces rising, like the Mars retrograde in your fifth will give you an extended period of time to focus on romance and dating and relationship stuff. And it is going to trine Saturn. So it's fine. But I think you're still swimming through, you're kind of swimming through the soup with Neptune and Saturn hanging out on your ascendant this year, right? It's trining all your Capricorn stuff. It's squaring your Mercury. So, there is this feeling of being like, what do I want in relationships? Especially when it's going right over your natal Mercury, right? It could be like, what do I want from relationships? What do I want for my career? No lottery. Not necessarily this year. You got Neptune on the cusp. So, money could come. The North Node is in the 8th house. But if money is coming, it's something that you're bringing in because you're visualizing it, you're manifesting it, you're writing it or speaking it into reality. Neptune in the North Node in your 8th house, there can be some really interesting things happening with money this year, especially with the square to Mercury. And what's funny is like, the whole sign, 5th house is more about like kind of gambling and stuff. And so you have all these planets there. Venus is there. I think at the very least, Venus being there could be good for your love life. But your actual money is going to come from Mercury. And even Mercury, connected to the 2nd house is retrograde. So there's a lot of like, am I spending too much where I'm living? Do I want to move to another area? Like what's going on? And inevitably, down the road, you're going to want to watch these eclipses because the eclipses are going to start now coming into your 7th house. So, when you have this Virgo eclipse next spring in mid-March, the retrograde Mercury is dipping into the 7th. Like basically March, April is like, that's the time to watch. I feel like Virgo risings and Libra risings are going to be the two signs that are going to have the biggest changes in relationships next spring. Because the eclipses and the retrogrades are impacting the 7th house. So for you, the 7th house the 8th house retrogrades going into the 7th is going to be about opening up vulnerability, intimacy, merging with another person. And obviously, that kind of happening in your solar return chart is definitely a huge turning point. And that's usually your ascendant. So that can be an indication that somebody's actually approaching you. Somebody's going to come looking for you, right? Which is probably how you want it, considering the retrograde and the eclipses are going to be on your natal ascendant. So you may not see this person coming. They may literally find you or like walk right up to you, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful. I promise that the Saturn stuff should ease up a little bit after the Jupiter-Saturn square because you're getting hit both ways. Saturn in your ascendant sign and then it's squaring your chart ruler. And that does feel heavy in the 4th house, Just trying to retire and be his trophy wife. I feel that. You say that, but you have all that Capricorn and Sag in your chart. You say that, but like even if you had that, there's no way in hell that you would like really retire. I know you joke, but there's no way you would do that. Sorry. Oh man. All right, so let's pull up Stephanie's chart. I hope you have a happy birthday, Coco. All right, we got Stephanie here. What's up, Stephanie? I can work from home. See? That's what I'm talking about. Stephanie says general reading for the next couple months. All right, so we've got Stephanie here, June 13th, 83, 11:59 in Brooklyn. What's up, Todman? Well, probably the thing that catches my eye the most with your chart right now, let's see, so we've got the node on the ascendant and the descendant. You got Jupiter creeping up on your north node. You have got Mars. Okay, so nothing's really triggering your Venus, which is good. You don't have anything going on that's impacting your chart ruler. You do have Venus that's coming into some interesting aspects here. So It does look like something I would watch is that Venus is getting ready to come into a conjunction with Pluto. All right, so that's going to be around the 7th of December. Now, it's a quick moving transit, but stay with me. You are Venus, so when Venus is on the move and goes into a new house or a new sign, things happen. Venus in the 5th house is a great transit. This is great for having fun, great for dating, for romance, creativity, in an abstract, unique, unusual way, okay? And this is also really great for like hobbies. So Venus going into your 5th house is going to be a couple of weeks where all of these things are going to become highlighted. And what's kind of cool is Venus will trine your ascendant. So it's good for your health, your body, and your appearance and joy. And then it's also going to come into a trine with Jupiter. So you got a nice little slice of time here after the Venus-Pluto conjunction, which could be an opportunity to connect with somebody romantically. Or if you're in an existing relationship, things could be a little bit more passionate. And you're going to see a nice run until it comes out of a trine with Jupiter. So that's going to be until about the 20th. So dating, romance, creativity, hobbies are all enhanced. And then you're going to see Venus come into a trine with your Pluto and Saturn. And I feel like this is about feeling more confident. This is about feeling more, I think, creative, happier even. And then Venus is going to leave. It's going to go into Pisces. It's still in your 5th house. So you're going to have that pretty much extended into January. And then it's going to sit on your moon, which is really good for health and also work and career. Obviously watching like, Venus going into your 6th house of health, work, and daily routine means that there can be something that's better that's happening in regards to these things at work, or your health improving, or enjoying something about your office space or your habits. And you've got Mars retrograde in your 10th house. So, Libras and Libra risings, starting in early December when Mars turns retrograde, it's going to be heading back towards your 10th house. So it looks like Mars will be completely retrograde in your 10th house. This hasn't happened. I think it was since like 2009, if I remember correctly. It's either 2009, 2010. But Mars retrograde in the 10th is where you're reworking, rethinking, reviewing. What am I doing professionally? Do I like what I'm doing? Do I want to make a change? Am I scaling back? Am I going in a different direction? Mars does rule your relationships. So a lot of Libras and Libra risings can also be, who are single. Hey, do I want to get back into dating again? Do I want to meet somebody? Do I want to be exclusive? If you're in a committed relationship, there can definitely be some big changes that can be happening. And it doesn't have to be bad. It's just, Mars retrograde in the 10th is like trying to kind of gauge, where you're going in the future and what the goals are and how you're working together. Can be a little testy in regards to people that you're working with. So I would say this is a time where, you want to kind of slow down when it comes to work. You're not taking time off unless you want to. It's just more about kind of being like, okay, how am I really strategizing and prioritizing, going in a direction that's going to, bring me more, right? More emotional fulfillment, more money, because Mars is connected to the second. Okay, so no relationship. So here's the thing, right? For Mars to be going retrograde in your 10th house, it wants you to spend more time in your 10th house. And Mars does rule relationships. So if you have like a business that's client-based, or if you work with people, or if you have people that you have to kind of connect and collaborate with, there's probably gonna be more business coming. And equally, the more that you're out in the world, like doing stuff out in public, connecting with people, the more likelihood that you will, meet new business partners, clients, or even romantic partners. Mars rules your 7th, and if we look at your natal Mars, it's in Cancer, okay? So something that's kind of happening in this next year after this period is then we're gonna get into the spring where Saturn and Neptune start squaring your Mars, so it's gonna get you thinking about, okay, do I need a new chapter in regards to creating a new reality in a relationship? Do I need something real? Are new people showing up into my life? Which I guarantee that will be happening in the spring with the retrogrades here. And then you're going to see this square Mars. So you could be reevaluating like, okay, if I have been single for a long time, is it time to get the show on the road and meet someone? You can be reevaluating who you're working with. But I think when that's all said and done and Jupiter hits your Mars, not only is it good for your career, but it's actually really good for your relationships. And it can be a period of time where you're kind of making some kind of announcement about there's a positive change in your relationships in general. Pluto's going into it's in Aquarius, but it's going into your 5th house. And I think for like Libras and Libra risings, for some of them, they get baby fever. Some of them will have, pregnancies. Others will meet someone they fall madly in love with, somebody younger. There can be like new hobbies and things that are kind of coming up that you become really interested and fixated on. So that can be something that can happen here as well. So I would watch for that, knowing that Pluto's going to be in your 5th house, where there's about to be a huge change in regards to matters of love, romance, dating and sex. And then Saturn going into the 7th house of committed relationships, and then Jupiter, hitting your midheaven. I mean, your life is looking pretty different next year, my dear. There's definitely upgrades going on all around. And it makes sense because right now you're in a 6th house year, at least until June. So you're going to find that like the March, April time is going to be really prominent for, I think, kind of getting things in order, especially when it comes to your health and your career, possibly having some, new scheduling or new staff or new people you're working with. And then when you get into your birthday next year, you're going to be in a 7th house year, which is about relationships. And if we look at what's going on in June, Jupiter is in conjunction to your 7th house lord, right? And then Saturn and Jupiter show up. There's a huge relationship change that's going to happen next summer. Huge. Just with these two. And also your career status is going to change as well. So, I think I would say this to any Libra rising. Eclipses in your 7th house means people are still coming, especially in end of March. Mercury retrograde means you're going to be reassessing and reconnecting. And then Venus retrograde is, what do I want? Just be cautious with Saturn and Neptune there, that you want people who are trustworthy, honest, direct, and they have a plan, right? Because Aries can be very self-absorbed or self-consumed with Saturn going there, and Neptune can sometimes be where they're not seeing so clearly. So you could meet somebody where you're like, oh my God, they're amazing, but just make sure that they're, they have healthy mental, emotional kind of stuff. Make sure there's no issues going on with addiction. Make sure that there's honesty and transparency in your dealings with them. Because just Saturn showing up would be enough for me to be like paying attention to who's coming in. But eclipses, retrogrades, Neptune, and then all of that is squaring Mars. See, a lot of Libra and Libra risings are actually going to have a very big year next year. There's somebody that's going to come into their life that's going to help kind of push them up. And it could be a business partnership. It could be a therapist, right? It doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but some kind of partnership is going to come in that's going to help push them up and help them gain some kind of exposure. But it can also mean that it's a difficult relationship. And with Saturn and Neptune being there, there could be some people who support you, but there could be some like resentment going on, or there could be some people who are not necessarily who they say they are. So you have to be really kind of aware of who you're kind of dealing with next year, right? So right now it's more about what direction am I changing in regards to my long-term goals in my career, or who I want to be, or what I want to be. And retrograde from Leo back into Cancer is like, how can I get into something more nurturing, or how can I be in a relationship that's more nurturing, or what am I nurturing in terms of my professional aspirations? And like, where changing direction with that could also open the door and make it possible for you to connect in a relationship in a big way. Go back and look at what happened when you were like, I think it was 18, 30. Okay, those 2 years are when you had 7th house years. So there should have been some significant change either with a career or a relationship based off of your chart, where it was like a relationship ended, a new career began, or you switched jobs and then you met someone, something like that happened. So you're going to see that kind of come back again. And it's all happening like basically right around your birthday. It's going to be all year, but it's going to start either right before your birthday or right around your birthday that you're going to see this stuff start kind of kicking up. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful for you. A situationship. Yeah. What are we doing? You have Mars at 0 degrees. So there is a sense of being like, you have to be in a public relationship with somebody. I don't oftentimes say you have to or you must do that. But if you have your 7th house Lord in the 10th, you will. And it is conjunct the sun. So it also might be somebody you work with, or it might be somebody who you meet through work, or somebody who could be like a boss or a superior who starts kind of like pursuing you. But yeah, you will meet somebody with that transit. Okay. Enjoy that Mercury retrograde in your 3rd. be careful with communications. At least it's trining Venus, so actually it's really great for making plans to travel, connect with friends, and do things. It's a little bit more friendly in your chart than it is for some other Libra risings. Okay. Funny, I'm interested in an Aries that I work with. Of course, the person who you end up being with will either be like Aries, Capricorn, or Cancer, or they'll have a combination of those 3 signs because you've got Mars in the 10th in Cancer, right? At 0 degrees. So quick relationship. It'll start really quick. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Stephanie. I want the 411 in the spring when those planets start ingressing. Ooh, I'm really curious to see what happens there. You're welcome. All right, guys. Well, that is it for me for tonight. I will be back here on Sunday. We're going to do astro weather. It's the end, obviously, of November, so we're going to talk about the astrology for December. If you haven't checked out my December horoscopes, they're already live on the channel, so you can go and see what the year, the end of the year, what the month has in store for you. We're going to be dropping all kinds of stuff all December long, kind of getting ready for 2025. Equally, if you guys want to join me for my New Year's Day astrology webinar, we're going to be doing a hour-long presentation. We do it every year about the astrology of the up and coming year. And if you guys know anything at all about 2025, you know it is wild. Pluto changed signs. Obviously, Uranus is going into Gemini, Saturn's going into Aries, Neptune's going into Aries, Jupiter's going into Cancer. All the outer planets are changing signs. That's a big deal. So there's a lot of change. There's new nodal shifts. We're going into the North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. So that means there's new eclipses. I feel like for once we're going to have a total breath of fresh air. We're going to have some very, very different astrology to talk about. So I look forward to that. Check out my website. You guys can get 20% off on buying your tickets early if you want to join me for my New Year's Day live presentation. I'd love to see you there. And you can check out all the other things that we have on the store, calendars and all kinds of stuff. We also have a 2025 personalized 12-month horoscope reading. I only have I think 9 of them left, but basically it's your entire year. I'm going to talk to you about every planet that's going to be changing signs, all of the eclipses. I'm going to tell you the best times for relationship, travel, business, health. I have an intake form where I ask you some questions about what your goals are for the year, so how I can help you. And then I'm going to take you through all of the months and talk about all of the time periods. So it's like the most in-depth reading that you can get. It is not generalized like other astrology readings that you're going to kind of receive. It's going to be based 100% off of your chart, and it's recorded. So if you guys want me to help you make 2025 your best year yet, definitely check that out and everything else that we got going on. And that's all at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. With that being said, I will catch you guys back here on Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see all of you guys very soon. Take care.